After 2 years of waiting, Aniplex and Shaft have finally released a new trailer for the final movie in the Puella Magi Madoka Magica saga, Walpurgisnacht Rising. And it kicks ass, seriously. Outside of the initial 2 year wait since its announcement, and of course the 10-year wait since Rebellion, this movie's trailer delivers the charm and mystery of the series that we've loved ever since its debut. The trailer is fantastic, and today I'm going to dive into the details of the trailer and give my theories on exactly what's going on in this movie. Starting off the trailer, we hear a phone ringing and the hand of a character who appears to be Homura Akemi. Out of the back of her hand emerges a phone, presumably the one that we hear ringing, and upon picking it up, Homura starts speaking. She picks it up and says, "Can you accept the risks and responsibilities?" The scene cuts to a long shot of the newly redesigned Homura sitting atop some sort of statue, and then she continues to say, "Can you fight against the curse of this world?" It is very important to note that this Homura has a starkly different attitude and design to the one that we're familiar with. She takes a higher pitched voice, and she is constantly smiling. Her clothes appear far different to Homura's magical girl attire. We don't know the reason for this officially just yet, but we'll come back to that in my theory section. Moving on, we get a flash of text describing Walpurgisnacht. She is described here as a legend passed down through generations. Alongside this, we hear Homura, presumably the same one we just met, saying various lines associated with her in the past but slightly altered. It's a secret, don't tell anyone, appears to reference how Madoka and Mami being magical girls was a secret in her first timeline as seen in the original series. "There's one thing that you must do," references Madoka's request for Homura to make sure that she doesn't become a magical girl when she resets time. A second flash of text appears calling Walpurgisnacht a magical girl's worst and most powerful enemy, and then it proceeds to call her a calamity. Next, the voice of Homura continues speaking, and she says, "That's love," referencing Homura's declaration of love for Madoka at the end of Rebellion to the Incubators. "What nonsense" is a bit of a stretch, but it might be referring to the end of Rebellion where Homura dismisses Sayaka's concerns about her new world. "Devil" references Homura giving herself this title at the end of Rebellion, where she becomes a godlike being similar to Madoka and reshapes the universe. As we continue, we start to hear the phone playing a hang-up dial as Homura continues speaking. She next says, "A magical girl I don't know." This quote doesn't seem to reference anything specifically tied to Homura, but it might be referring to Madoka's state as seen at the end of the original series, having been removed from existence with Homura being the only one who remembers her. More text appears, this time reading, "In the past, the existence brought hope, and eventually scatters curses. The law of cycles saved us," which is of course referencing the law of cycles' former role in purifying the despair of magical girls. Homura then begins to say on repeat, "Bring hope, just bring hope," and text appears on the screen once again. This time the text reads, "I want to see you one more time," referencing the plot of Rebellion in which Homura's end goal was of course to make a world where Madoka didn't have to suffer. "Goodbye, just release that girl," is said next. And here's where things get a little confusing. At face value, this might be referencing Rebellion's climax where Homura tears Madoka out of the law of cycles and splits her into two entities. Release that girl would simply state that act as it happened. But I also wonder if it might be someone telling Homura to release Madoka from the new world she made. What sounds like a second voice, presumably Madoka's, says, "Hey Homura." We then continue with Homura's voice, who then says, "My best friend," referencing the line that Madoka says to her in the finale of the main series before she remakes the universe. Text then appears saying, "This world is for Madoka," referencing the end of Rebellion where Homura remakes the universe. In the background of all of this, we have been seeing flashes of various scenes of Homura throughout the main series and movies. Everything is in grayscale and they flash in quick succession, implying someone viewing them as memories or recounting them to someone. Madoka Magica is no stranger to absurd imagery, so I wouldn't be surprised if what appears to be a shot just made for the trailer ends up being an important plot thread in the movie. The lost frame in particular is very interesting to me. It's from the scene in Rebellion where Homura becomes a witch. What's interesting is that this scene is one of only it's the only one that I can immediately recall where she uses a phone, and it's placed here when the phone in the background hangs up. We will definitely get back to this later. Moving on, we get more new footage, this time showing us a character who initially looks like Madoka, but there are some key differences. Her hair is closer to being beige, her dress is different from Madoka's, seeming to be closer to Mami's, and the bow in her hand is more similar to Homura's. This could still be Madoka, but for the time being, I'm going to class her as a new character. Said character prepares to fire an arrow from her bow. And in the next shot, we see Madoka floating midair while an explosion occurs around her and engulfs her. I imagine this is most likely a labyrinth opening up around her. We see another shot of this new character being held by red ribbons while flying through the air. There is definitely something off about this character. She seems to have a design that is purposefully evocative of different characters of the quintet in some way. We'll once again return to her shortly. After that, we see a city skyline, somewhat similar to the area where Sayaka fights Elsa Maria. I don't believe it's the same place, but I thought the similarity was, interesting enough to bring up. Next, we see a rather classic scene of Sayaka, Hitomi, and Madoka walking together, presumably to school. The backdrop, however, is new, showing arched hedges with various colors and species of flowers on them. We quickly focus on Madoka's face as she gets distracted by something. And the character, who we assume is Homura, is sitting, smiling, and holding a parasol in the center of a garden as if waiting for Madoka. Now, I think these are two separate shots, but given Madoka Magica's surreal imagery, I wouldn't be surprised if the places are one and the same, just looking a little different from each perspective. Next comes by far the biggest shock of the trailer. We see Kyoko, Mami, and Sayaka appear in an area that looks similar to the cityscape we saw before, but with overhauled designs. Starting with Kyoko, her hair seems to be shorter and more disheveled. She has new bands on her wrists, her left arm appears to have a bandage, and on her right she seems to have a different type of detached sleeve than what we're used to. Under her usual red dress appears to be a dark red singlet or undershirt. Moving on to Mami, her design changes aren't as drastic, but her usual white jacket appears to be open into sort of a crop top or something, with a yellow blouse underneath. It's hard to tell from this scene, but it seems that she doesn't have her corset in this new design, and she's also lacking the ribbon that's usually around her neck. The biggest redesign comes in the form of Sayaka. Her face is heavily bandaged, only showing one eye. She has a white bow in her hair. She has dark blue fabric acting as a collar around her neck. She has long grey coloured sleeves, darker coloured gloves than usual, and her cape appears to be more of a cloak. Now, these design changes in my mind signify something huge in the movie, but this is another thing we'll return to once we get to the theory section of this video. Moving on, we see a close-up of an incubator's face. This makes sense that they're still in the movie, as Akuma Homura said that she still had uses for them at the end of Rebellion, most likely making them feel emotion at the end of that movie. It might be important to note that these incubators' eyes are slightly more oval-shaped here as opposed to what they look like in the original series. We then see some hair, who I assume is Homura's, as it flows upwards and shatters into multiple pieces of paper, which come together to form something, but then it cuts off before we see what it is. Most likely, I believe that they form the tower-like structure that we see glimpses of in the next shots, which have familiars occupying it. At the top of it in the first cut, we see Homura. A little further down in the next shot, we see her once again looking off to the side. And then one more time at the base, sitting in a chair. This time, Homura is sporting a redesign which seems to be in line with the designs we saw for Kyoko, Mami, and Sayaka. As this happens, we hear Homura saying, "And so let the curtain raise on tonight's dream." followed then by a close-up of the redesigned Homura's face, where she then says this exact same phrase. The trailer then ends giving us the logo, and on the Japanese version of the trailer we get the release date window of winter 2024. A lot just happened in this trailer, to say the least, and I definitely have thoughts on what happened. So now we will be driving solely into theory crafting territory. If you've watched this far at the moment, thank you so much. I hope you stick around for the theories as well. This new character, who looks a lot like Madoka, is quite the mystery. I'm naming them the Amalgamation currently because they appear to be invoking the designs of various characters all at once. Most immediately, they seem similar to Madoka. Their color scheme can be mistaken for pink at first, and they're an archer much like Madoka. However, unlike her, the Amalgamation's bow is black, more similar to Homuras. However, it's still not quite the same as hers, as it has a secondary color of red rather than purple. Their outfit is very immediately similar to Madoka's, albeit a little bit less puffy in the skirt, but also has darker tones overall. Theirs has puffy sleeves like Mami's outfit, as well as the detached sleeves also seen in that outfit. At a later point, we see them wrapped up in or using ribbons, which invokes Mami, but the ribbons here are red. While Mami did ensnare Homura in red ribbons in the main series, hers are typically depicted as yellow. The red colored ribbons is more indicative of either Homura or Madoka. So, what exactly is going on here? Who is the Amalgamation, and why do they look so much like various cast members? At its core, the main three characters of the series are of course Madoka, Homura, and Mami. There is really no arguing this, and this point alone gives us a good understanding of why the Amalgamation looks the way they do. What we don't see is the color of their eyes, and I think this is the key to solving the mystery. At the end of Rebellion, Homura splits the Law of Cycles into two beings, separating Madoka and the goddess from each other. In Homura's new world, which we see before the credits, Madoka is seen living a normal life, but she appears to be either taken over by the Law of Cycles or remembering that that role existed. Briefly, this happens as her eyes turn golden. She returns to normal again shortly thereafter. During the epilogue, the presence of the Law of Cycles is implied to be watching Homura as she sits atop the split hill, existing without a form. The Law of Cycles should only exist because of Madoka's wish, but now it seems to persist in a world where Madoka never became a magical girl. This would absolutely cause a paradox and what I believe is going to be the central conflict of the movie. The Law of Cycles only looks like Madoka because it was her who created it thanks to her wish. Now, in this trailer, I believe that this new character is actually the newest form of the Law of Cycles. It has recreated the body it once had from memory, attempting to take a form close in resemblance to Madoka, but because they were unable to remake her fully, they filled in the gaps by taking parts of other important pieces of her life, notably Homura and Mami because of their roles in her becoming a magical girl. We don't see the Amalgamation's eyes in the trailer, and I'm pretty sure that's because they're golden, and showing them here and now would give away a major twist of the film. So, to summarize, I am pretty sure that the Amalgamation is the Law of Cycles. Something that becomes very quickly apparent is that this movie has multiple distinct versions of Homura. The trailer opens up on one of these new versions, who I will call Parasol Homura. She is very eerily happy, very dainty in her appearance and pose, and her magical girl outfit is far removed from what we're used to. She has a slightly purple colored shade of hair, and as we see later in the trailer, she carries a black parasol. She has a weapon of some kind which takes the form of a vintage rotary phone that emerges from the back of her hand where we usually see Homer's soul gem. Parasol Homura's outfit holds design similarities to Walpurgisnacht, and I'll be honest, I'm not entirely sure the reason behind this yet. My working theory is that it will be revealed that Walpurgisnacht, like Madoka, was able to get so powerful because they were both tied to Homura's wish. This is something I have been thinking of for a long time, actually, and it seems that this movie is going to explain it in a way. In some way, they will probably explain that Homura is Walpurgisnacht in the sense that she only exists because of Homura, resulting in Parasol Homura being the one who eventually turns into her in some way. The second Homura we see is one that I'll call Ribbon Homura. I think that she only appears on the poster. She is staring down Parasol Homura and appears to also have that new phone-like weapon. She still has the red ribbon in her hair that we saw at the end of the original series, but I don't think that this is Rebellion Homura. We don't know too much about her, at least I don't think so, but I think we see her in all of the flashback sequences that have Homura's back facing the viewer. Note that we do not see Ribbon Homura's face in the poster. Maybe she is wearing her glasses again, who knows. To further explore why I think that, we need to talk about who I think is the third version of Homura. The third and final version of Homura is seen at the very end of the trailer, sitting at the bottom of that tail-like structure. Based on the view of the soul gem, her expression that's on her face, and her overall jaded demeanor, I am very confident in saying that this is the same Homura that we've been following from the main series and is seen at the end of the epilogue of Rebellion. So, as such, we will call her Homura Prime. She lacks the red ribbon in her hair, and I'm certain that this tells us she isn't the same version of Homura that we see on the poster. My biggest piece of evidence for this is as follows. In the poster, Ribbon Homura, as I've called her, is in her school uniform, and in the trailer, we'll go back to that shot that I mentioned of Homura holding a smartphone from when she becomes a witch in Rebellion. She's in her school uniform in that shot. In that shot, she isn't wearing her ribbon. This tells me that we should be connecting these two versions of Homura. If I'm right, then this means we have three versions of Homura in this movie. So this obviously begs us the question of why. Some time ago on my old channel, I put together an analysis of the epilogue of Rebellion and came to the conclusion that the epilogue's split imagery might hint at multiple timelines coexisting and clashing with one another. At that time, I didn't have a lot of evidence to prove it and just put that thought aside, but I think that the trailer has finally proven it. Additionally, in my first theory about the movie's plot, I speculated Homer would be destroying every previous timeline to depower the law of cycles and detach her from Madoka completely. If this were to be true, it means Homura would inevitably clash with other versions of herself from the past. With all of this in mind, here's what I think is going on. Starting off, the movie will primarily be set inside of the world Homura Prime made at the end of Rebellion. The musical score of the epilogue of Rebellion hints at the law of cycles' existence being closer to a non-physical state and just keeping an eye on Homura Prime. Homura is afraid of it reaching Madoka again and will kickstart a plan to destroy past timelines. I believe these timelines must still exist, or the law of cycles itself would also cease to exist, and we obviously know that it does. By interacting with these timelines, however, Homura Prime unintentionally creates split versions of herself at key moments in time. The first of these is potentially Ribbon Homura, who will probably be split off from the ending of the TV series and movie too, just before she falls to despair in Rebellion. Parasol Homura is where this gets very tricky, however, but I think, after coming to this conclusion, that she is simply the magical girl that becomes Walpurgisnacht. Walpurgisnacht and Homura have many overlapping themes. Walpurgisnacht is the stage witch because of how grand and intrusive her labyrinth is. It's essentially a huge show. Her labyrinth in the main series is seen to resemble a circus or a fair. Similarly, Homura's labyrinth in Rebellion is themed around ballet and dance. While Homer Lily herself isn't a dancer, the labyrinth is inspired by the spectacle of dance, putting a focus on the big grand display of a dancer on a stage, something associated with Madoka, who is the focus of her labyrinth. Walpurgisnacht's gears are very evocative of the gears that power Homura's weapon that allow her to transcend and manipulate time. And even Walpurgisnacht's description says that she is a symbol of a fool that spins round and round. Homura, in turn, can be seen as a fool, looping time over and over until she gets her desired outcome. Walpurgisnacht is not the name of the witch, it is actually the title given to it by magical girls who have learned of her existence throughout history. In quite a similar manner, Homura is not herself. Her identity is far removed from who she used to be. In Rebellion, this is most apparent as she puts facade after facade on to hide her true nature. Much like how Walpurgisnacht transcends time as an urban legend, Homura quite literally transcends time with the use of her magic. Walpurgisnacht's nature is helplessness, much like how Cube describes Homura's goal in the original series. It also reflects how Homura feels that she feels helpless by the time the main series kicks in, feeling far detached from Madoka. All of this is to say that I think this movie will also serve as Walpurgisnacht's origin at the hands of Homura Prime splitting the timeline. The significance of the phone and what Parasol Homuras says gives me the impression that she has taken the place of the incubators and is the one who magical girls must sign contracts with in this new world, that being via a phone call. I think the nature of this movie in and of itself will be a time loop. Homura Prime making this new world as a result of initially trying to defeat Walpurgisnacht to save Madoka is what will eventually lead to the creation of Parasol Homura, who I think becomes Walpurgisnacht, most likely because she will be taking the despair of all magical girls who contract her. Why Homura Prime cannot defeat her then is because she would be undoing the catalyst of her wish, which would then undo the events needed to create Walpurgisnacht in the first place. I will say it right off the bat. The redesigns are 100% going to be important to the plot. And here's why I think that. I currently believe, as I've already said, Parasol Homura is the one who signs contracts with the magical girls in this world, replacing the incubators. I've also said that I think she will take on their despair and eventually turn into Walpurgisnacht. In this new world, if we assume Homura Prime has control, she would be the one limiting exactly what power goes where. And I believe that this is the main reason for why the designs are different. Kyoko, Mami, and Sayaka each make different wishes in this world, and so have different designs to reflect that. The biggest piece of evidence I have for this is that Mami is missing the ribbon usually seen around her neck. That ribbon, very importantly, is her weapon. It transforms into anything she knows the inner workings of. So, if Mami is missing her weapon, it stands to reason that the others are too. Now comes the question of why. Mami's weapon is directly tied to her magic, which is creation. Her magic is manifested in this way because of her wish. She wanted to survive the car crash she was in, and so my thought is that in order to do that, she created a body that wasn't damaged by the crash, thus leading her to have the magic power of creation. Kyoko and Sayaka's weapons are not tied to their magic like Mami's, but we can tell Sayaka's magic must be different too. Her wish manifested itself as giving her the power of regeneration. Why then would her face be so badly damaged that it needs to be constantly bandaged? This alone tells me that she no longer has the ability to heal because her magic and her wish are different this time around. It may be worth noting that while we see Hitomi, we do not see Kyosuke in the trailer. Of course, he might still be in the film, but if he isn't, then that alone means that the reason for Sayaka's original wish is gone. Kyoko's changes are the most minor, and it's even harder to determine from a glance if her magic has changed or not. Seen only in Madoka Magica Portable and the Different Story manga, Kyoko's magic is the ability to cast illusions, awakened by her wish involving making the illusion of people interested in her father's sermons. By the time the main series rolls around, Kyoko has actually forgotten how to use her magic, something that's explored in the Different Story. I have to assume that, like Mami and Sayaka, Kyoko too will have her life altered so that the catalyst of her wish is different. So, here's a wrap up of predictions. The amalgamation is a new form of the law of cycles. There are three versions of Homura existing in this movie's world. One of the versions of Homura will replace Kyubey as the contractor. Kyoko, Mami, and Sayaka's wishes are different because Homura's new world rewrote their pasts and changed the reason they become magical girls. The three make contracts with the version of Homura who replaces Kyubey. By being the contractor, this version of Homura is tasked with accepting all of the grief and despair of the magical girls who exist. the contractor eventually turns into Walpurgisnacht. The movie is a time loop going back to the main series' first timeline and explains that Homura's love for Madoka is ultimately the reason that Walpurgisnacht exists. The movie is going to be a fight between Arkham Homura and the Law of Cycles over Madoka's existence. So this is my absolutely insane ramble on this trailer. There's more thoughts that I have about this, but this is already going to be quite long, and this is something I wanted to get out there while the topic is still fresh. I will be eagerly awaiting the movie and any information that we get, and whether my theories end up true or not, I am more than excited to see what the finale will be like. We have all of the right people coming back to work on the movie, and we know that this movie has been in the works for years now, at least 7, if rumors are to be believed, so I'm pretty sure that the movie is in safe hands. With all of that said, I really hope that you enjoyed my analysis, and I'm looking forward to the movie as well. Thank you for watching, and I will see you guys next time.